Imagine this. You wake up, you check the news, and you see that a sitting president has been captured by a foreign military in his own country. It sounds like something out of a movie, right? But on January 3rd, 2026, it actually happened. A U.S. raid in Venezuela did just that. So today, we're going to break down how it happened, why it happened, and what it all means for the world.
And the way the world found out? Absolutely wild. It wasn't through some formal diplomatic announcement. Nope. It was a social media post at 5:21 in the morning Venezuelan time. President Trump just flat out announced that Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife were in U.S. custody. An incredible military action confirmed to the entire planet in a single post. And then, pretty quickly after that post, this photo surfaced. And suddenly, the unbelievable became very, very real. That's Nicolás Maduro, blindfolded on a U.S. naval ship. The image was just so stark, so undeniable. It completely erased any doubt. This wasn't a rumor. The capture was real. Now, something this huge just doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. So you have to be asking, how on earth did we get here? How did it become possible for the U.S. to launch a raid to capture a sovereign leader? Well, the answer lies in years and years of escalating tension. It really starts to ramp up back in March 2020. That's when the U.S. Justice Department indicted Maduro on some pretty serious narco-terrorism charges. Then you jump to 2024 and a presidential election that a lot of the world called a sham. After that, things moved fast. By August 2025, the U.S. was building up its military presence in the Caribbean. A few months later, a full-on maritime blockade, with the U.S. actually seizing Venezuelan oil tankers. And then, just one day before the raid, President Trump basically told the world that strikes were coming. And at the very heart of all this tension, all this conflict, is this one massive number, 300 billion. That's the estimated number of barrels of oil in Venezuela's reserves, the largest proven oil reserves on the entire planet. It's just impossible to understand this story without keeping that number in mind. And you don't even have to read between the lines. President Trump was extremely clear about the connection. Right after the raid, he said, quote, "We're in the oil business. We'll be selling oil," and even added that American companies would be going in to rebuild Venezuela's oil infrastructure. It was a pretty direct statement about the economic motivations at play. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of the operation itself. It was called Operation Absolute Resolve, and this was a meticulously planned strike, something that had been rehearsed for months. The whole thing was over in just 3 hours. Think about that. Just before midnight, Trump gives the green light. By 2 a.m., more than 150 U.S. aircraft are hitting targets, creating a massive diversion. And under the cover of all that chaos, elite Delta Force soldiers and the FBI's hostage rescue team helicopter right into the Capitol and storm this heavily guarded compound where they capture Maduro and his wife. Swift and decisive. But an operation of this scale is never without a human cost. And the numbers that came out, well, they tell two very different stories. Venezuelan and Cuban officials reported that over 80 of their personnel were killed. The U.S., on the other hand, reported just 2 injuries, and they said neither was life-threatening. A really stark contrast in the reported casualties. The raid was over in a matter of hours, but the global fallout, that was just getting started. Almost instantly, the world split into 2 camps. Was this a righteous blow against a dictator, or was it a shocking violation of national sovereignty? And you can see this split in the official stories. The Trump administration was very careful to call it a law enforcement action, not an act of war. The justification was that they were just pursuing an indicted narco-terrorist. But from the Venezuelan side, the new acting president called it what you'd expect: an illegal kidnapping and imperialist aggression designed to steal their oil. 2 completely irreconcilable narratives. And that division played out across the globe. You had major players like Russia, China, Brazil, and even Mexico condemning the action. On the other side, countries like Argentina and Israel praised it. And then you had others like the UK who were much more cautious, kind of waiting to see how the dust would settle. The world was definitely not on the same page. But perhaps the strongest official rebuke came from the United Nations. The Secretary General himself called it a dangerous precedent and said very bluntly that the rules of international law have not been respected. That's a huge statement, and it raised massive questions about the future of global order. So, with Maduro in U.S. custody and on his way to face trial, the most pressing question for everyone became, what happens now? What's the future for Venezuela?
And what does this all mean for American foreign policy going forward?
Well, President Trump quickly gave his new approach a name, the Don Roe Doctrine, which is, of course, a play on the old Monroe Doctrine. His declaration that American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again was a signal of a major shift, a move away from international consensus and toward a much more assertive, unilateral approach to foreign policy.
And the aftermath on the ground is just incredibly complex. Politically, yeah, Maduro was gone, but his entire power structure was still there. People started calling it Madurismo without Maduro. Legally, many experts called it a crime of aggression, a clear violation of the UN Charter. And then there's the economic reality. Venezuela's oil industry was a wreck, and it would need billions of dollars and years of work just to get back on its feet.
So we're left with this fundamental, giant question. Was Operation Absolute Resolve a decisive, maybe even necessary action to bring an indicted narco-terrorist to justice? Or was it a dangerous precedent for a new kind of resource imperialism, a world where international law takes a backseat to national interest? The answer and the consequences of this one event are something we're going to see unfold for years to come.